Continuing here on the bye week on your latest Locked On Browns. Obviously, it's been a tough couple of days here. Everybody's still stewing over Baltimore. And one of the biggest reasons everybody is because it's the bye week. Normally, we shift it up. We start talking about the next week, but you got another 10 days before that. Jake Burns from the OBR joins. Your latest Locked On Browns starts now.
You are Locked On Browns, your daily Cleveland Browns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends, your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound, LGB on the LOB, the Locked On Browns podcast, brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Your host, Jeff Lloyd. I appreciate all of you who make Locked On Browns your first listen every single day. To the everyday crowd, which just keeps getting bigger, join the everyday crowd by being subscribed to the Locked On Browns YouTube channel. And, of course, Locked On Browns is always available, always free, wherever you get your podcasts. We got Jake Burns from the OBR in here. We're going to talk, obviously, a little bit between the white lines here, what's going on with this team to this point. I think everybody's in a negative spot right now, and I get it after a demoralizing loss like we had on Sunday against the Baltimore Ravens. Again, if there was a game to look forward to this Sunday, I think maybe everybody would start amping up and be back on the Browns BS like you all seem to find a way to do. But with having 10 days to wait, you got no playoff baseball action, nothing to fill the void. I get where you're all at. Jake, we'll start with Deshaun Watson. And look, none of us know what happened Sunday, and obviously none of us know. And one of the weirdest things about everything is, normally with the Cleveland Browns, if you don't practice on Friday, there's a good chance you don't play on Sunday. Will there be expectations for the quarterback? Would there be not expectations? Would there obviously, be exceptions for the quarterback, exceptions for Myles Garrett, Nick Chubb, most likely. But he said he couldn't go. He couldn't go. But Jake, up until Sunday, when we found Deshaun Watson wasn't going to play, we were reveling in, okay, we think we finally have gotten him back to what we thought we were waiting for, 27-33, damn near 300 yards. And all of a sudden, I think because of what went on Sunday and the offense looking as lackluster it did in DTR, whatever, look, this is still Deshaun Watson's team. And the last we saw Deshaun Watson, he looked really damn good. Shoulder bruise ain't going to take you out for an entire season.
I mean, they did finally take some steps in the right direction. I think there's some penalty flag help that provided some extension of drives in that game. So it's not like, you kind of look at that and you presume the numbers are a little bit better than maybe what they are because they got extra plays off of flags that I thought some of them were good. Some of them were a little iffy, but nonetheless, it was a step in the right direction for the offense. They finally did some nice things with creating an opportunity one-on-one with Jerome Ford, where they deciphered a scheme from the week before where anytime the Titans saw a running back go out of the backfield, out of a backfield setup and gun and went out wide, they would put a linebacker on him and play zone around that and have one-on-one with that linebacker. They isolated it, did a great job of using a route that they consistently use for running back wide situations, what's called an under route, and then they did a double move off of it. So, I'm Jeff, you probably brought on the wrong person to be super positive about the offense. I actually think that I'm very concerned about where they're at and where they're going, largely because I think they sincerely lack an identity offensively. I think they're trying to do some things that, Kevin is built in. Listen, Kevin's built in a way that is very rigid to Gary Kubiak's structure. It's what he knows. Kevin came up, was a secondary guy in his playing days, his early coaching days, then starts to get into offense, learns Kubiak's scheme in his long tenure in Minnesota, brings it to Cleveland, and it's fine. It worked in an era in the NFL where that thing was sweeping the league, defenses catching them off guard, and then defenses have caught up to that stuff. They have really figured out how to defend under center bootleg. If you look at the teams that you would expect, Jeff, to be the highest under center play action teams, you would probably look at the guys like McVay, Shanahan, and Mike McDaniel. Well, they're not. The Rams are 15th in the NFL in under center play action percentage. The 49ers are like close to dead last, and McDaniel's Dolphins are like 27th, right? Like this teams aren't using it the way that it used to be run. So they run all of this wide zone stuff. And that's largely what Kevin knows. That's his DNA as a play caller. And defenses have figured out better ways to defend that, better ways to defend the bootlegs off of it. And it's led to a lot of dead air. It's just led to a lot of dead plays. So they're going to a lot of empty, trying to space things out, give their quarterback some defined reads. They are doing some things I like, but not enough. They're doing too much east-west gun run. The power counter stuff is not as north-south as I'd like it. They run what's called pin pull, where they pin an edge and loop around some blockers to lean around the edge. And you can do that stuff when you have a vision extraordinaire in Nick Chubb, who can really set things up to cut one direction or the other. But when you start with Jerome, you start with Pierre, you start with Kareem, they need north-south bread and butter. I tweeted this earlier, Jeff, that the Browns are 6th in the NFL in yards per play when using RPOs. And even better, 3rd in the NFL when they use the rush off of it, which is largely inside zone when you use RPO concepts. And they've only run 18 of them this year, which is 24th in the NFL in usage. So, like, I don't listen. Watson's better than DT. If he played yet Sunday, they would have figured some things out. They would have been relatively fine. They will win if they keep the structure of the offense, Jeff. They will win games. They have more talent. They will be fine enough to win 9-10, and somehow things break the right way. Defense continues to do what they're doing, can win 11 games, and that's fine. But the ceiling of what we want the Cleveland Browns to be is a Super Bowl ceiling. The way they're running offense, the rigidity of the way Kevin runs it, and a lack of people he's brought in over the years to help him evolve and turn into an offense that I think their quarterback, again, the Texans were like 9th in the NFL in 2020 in RPO usage. They had 8 touchdowns, no interceptions, 3rd most yards, on top of some of the things they did out of gun, which was so unique and fun. So, like, they have brought in a quarterback that had all these fun traits, all these things he could do, and then they put an offense in place that doesn't want to do them. That wants to put him in an offense that was structured around Jacoby and Baker and Kirk Cousins types, and they're trying to ask him to do those things, which, as we know, playing in rhythm and playing in time is not the strength of Deshaun Watson. He likes a little freelance. He likes a little ability to manipulate defenders, and I'm just amazed. I'm perplexed and confused at why they're doing what they're doing. Like, Jeff, I'm telling you, man, I don't mean to be long-winded here, but if you go watch their Week 12 game against Houston last year, where he wasn't good, the offense was bad, but it was his first game back in a year and a half. It was in Houston, where he's the pariah. I'm not surprised that the offense wasn't good, and I'm not even surprised at all that he wasn't good. But they came out in that game, and they ran their highest volume of RPO usage in a single game. They ran their highest volume of inside zone. And I'm like, okay, this is who they want to be. They did this change in a week's time. They put in this heavy game plan built this way. It's going to be hard for a while because the Browns' core group of offensive players they need to change the thinking, the thought process. All of it needs to evolve. They'll get through this season using it, take the lumps on the way to the rest of the year, and then go into the offseason and be full board into this. It'll be like a hybrid variation of what Kevin knows, kind of paired with what Steichen and Sirianni are using. You can steal some of that. You can steal some of what McDaniel's using in Tennessee. You can take a bunch of elements around the league. Well, they did none of that. They quit doing it after the Texans game because I don't know why. They were bad, and they thought we can't do this because it was rough. Well, that was one game with your guys on the fly. Instead, they went back, they reverted. And I can understand a little bit of why they reverted, because they were still alive for the playoffs at that point, and they maybe wanted to try to do what was best for the collective instead of putting Deshaun into this thing. But, like, my general point is, if they would have been doing it from then through the offseason into now, and evolving on those principles, then you would have a Super Bowl caliber offense, in my opinion, if it grew out to be what it was. They're very capped out in who they are right now. Very capped out. Defenses know what they're doing. They have a great feel for the scheme Kevin likes to run. There's a lack of game day adjustments and evolutions and answers, and defenses are playing on their toes, Jeff. I think you would agree with me when you watch them. Defenses are not on their heels. They're very much on their toes. They very much are click and close. They know what's coming. They're trusting the scouting report because the data is out there about what the Browns like to do. So I'm concerned. The defense is Super Bowl caliber. We can talk about that. We're going to. I think they have a ceiling that says they could win a Super Bowl with that defense. But with this offense, you're talking about an all-in situation. They want to spend. They've done everything they can to put this team in the right place. The scheme, the way they're calling it, the way they're operating is lacking, and it's locking the ceiling of the overall organization.
And look, this was a team that was never supposed to get to it where it was supposed to be a highly running team, an analytic team. It was never supposed to be the way. Nick Chubb just basically exceeded everything, and they were in a position where they had no choice because he was the best offensive player. But now you have the financial commitment to him. And look, don't buy the Ferrari. Don't buy the Corvette. Don't buy the Maserati if you're planning to go pick up kids from school and take them back and forth to soccer practice. You went out and got him. Let him go do what he's supposed to do. And, look, we all, when we get in tough spots.
I've literally asked, why did you trade for him? They said when they traded for him, there's this thing that Kevin said, I'm sure you remember. He's like, we sat down with a tablet full of plays and I was showing him things I was excited. Well, what are you talking about? Because you've been an almost identical brand to what you were with Baker and with Jacoby. I don't really get. I genuinely have questions about why the trade was made if you don't look at accentuating every single positive of what made Deshaun the guy that could get $230 million guaranteed from his Texans days. So I'm so confused, and I've said it on my show all week, and I've kind of said it for weeks, and any place I visited this week, it doesn't make any sense to me. I really couldn't be more confused with that direction. So again, they could come out of the bye week and try to fix this stuff and get back on the right track. And you could take your lumps over the next 3 or 4 weeks, but then have a schedule that gives you a chance to still make the playoffs. And that eventually could launch your ceiling to be a higher level. I don't know. I'm not trying to say their season is written here by any stretch of the imagination, but I'm just saying, I'm very concerned that they're playing in a style of football right now that is making things as hard as possible on the guys that are on the field on offense.
And, just one quick example is before we get to a commercial break is look what's being done right now with Myles Garrett. You were using Myles Garrett in every way possible to get the absolute best out of him. Shouldn't you be doing the same thing with your $230 million quarterback? We're going to keep going here. Jeff Floyd joined here by Jake Burns. Having a little fun here. And look, there's still ball to be talked about. And look, guys, I get it. Everybody's upset. Get out. Get some fresh air. Enjoy the bye week. And we'll start arguing about the 49ers and the Cleveland Browns here soon enough. You're the latest Locked On Browns. Will continue. Thanks for being along for the ride. Our partners at eBay Motors have teamed up with Locked On Fantasy Football host Vinny Iyer to bring you some of the best fantasy picks each week, all season long. Whether you're prepping for a daily draft or scouting the waiver wire, every week we're going to provide you players that are guaranteed to fit on your roster. So let's see who Vinny has picked out for us on this week's eBay Guaranteed Fit. Jets running back Breece Hall has had a tough season so far with his limited usage, but his explosive 56-yard rushing game on only 6 carries against the Chiefs in Week 4 is great foreshadowing for his best game of the season. When the Jets blow through Denver in Week 5, look for Hall to fly a mile high with his speed and explosiveness. The Broncos defense is falling apart against the run, especially versus faster backs. Expect Hall to go off to help the Jets to get a much-needed road win. Vinny Iyer from Locked On Fantasy Football is going to help you win your fantasy football championship, and eBay Motors as a championship team is about each player being a perfect fit. Same with your vehicle. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you can make sure your ride stays running smoothly. Brake kits, LED headlights, roof rack bumpers, whatever your baby needs, eBay Motors has it. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, it's guaranteed to fit your ride the first time, every time, or your money back. Plus, at these prices, you're burning rubber, not cash. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. Continuing on here, your latest Locked On Browns. Appreciate you all for making the show your first listen every day. And, of course, join the everyday crowd by subscribing to Locked On Browns YouTube channel. Jake, and just a couple things here. Continuing with the offense, we'll get to defense in segment 3. Elijah Moore. Look, love the player, love the potential. But in order to do all this gimmicky stuff and, whatever the Dolphins do, until we get to the point where he is truly established as a threat, as just a true wide receiver, you have him doing 7 jobs, and we don't necessarily have him doing the main job. The other one I do have is, as far as the running ball, look, we know the run game has to change. And I do understand the fact that they're in a little tough spot here is, what does Jerome do well? What does Kareem do well? What does Pierre do well? And we have an offensive line right now that is performing below expectations. But there's got to be some semblance to running the ball. But, the Elijah Moore thing, let's have people scared to death of him because you're giving off the fear that everybody's scared to death of him. It's just not the case yet as far as he is as a wide receiver.
Yeah, I would say it's like crack cocaine for these coaches to get like a 5'7" through 5'9" receiver, and they're like, we got to get this guy in the backfield and let him run, right? No, when they traded for him, I thought he was a really interesting. He played X in New York. He played some Z. I thought he could be an outside receiver and just play him there. Now, he's not going to go win the football vertically over top of people all the time or anything, but the way he could snap off routes and create separation, I thought he was best suited to be an outside receiver. Let's just with that vertical route tree. Now, I thought he could play the slot, but I didn't want him to play the slot, even though I think he can. Hell, at this point, though, I'd be happy with him playing 100% of slot snaps. To your point, and what I'm trying to say, man, these backfield snaps, like they're just wasting their time. Like you're putting a guy in a position that, you know, even if you go watch his Ole Miss tape, he wasn't really doing that stuff, man. They treated him like a wide receiver. So it's just like I appreciate. It's almost like I appreciate the effort to want to get the football into his hands. But if you just play him at wide receiver, you can get the football into his hands plenty. So I think that they're doing themselves a really big disservice. The 20-yard negative run the other day was a byproduct of him not having a feel for when to cut up field. He was trying to stretch laterally when he needed to cut up field and read blocks. And again, I can't blame Elijah for that because he's not in that position enough. And like, so that's a usage issue. And there's usage issues all over the place with that. And like, they only used him in the backfield, I think, once or twice this past Sunday. So maybe they're figuring out we don't need to do this, but just let him play receiver, man, and just throw him the football. It's not hard. And I think Kevin is like, he's wanting to fix issues with like going to buy a different paint color, right? And instead it's like, hey, it's just your technique. Just get the technique of how to paint down and the paint will look fine. And that's like my thing is that you see all of these gadgets and tricks and, you know, they're like trying to hang posters over the ugly spots on the wall. Just paint it the right way, work on your technique, get it down, and it'll be fine. So I don't know if that's the best analogy, but like, I just think that they're trying to patch up and do these weird, and I can appreciate a gadget answer off of a scheme wrinkle. Like I didn't mind that little Harrison Bryant flip throwback. Like that was Charles Davis is a goofball. That throw was open. They had a chance to throw that for a touchdown, but the Postage misses his block. He doesn't hold long enough and the quarterback can't step into it and throw it the way he needs to throw it. I can appreciate some of those things, but just like when you put Elijah Moore in the backfield, the defense knows you're throwing it. And if they see him, like first of all, we know you're not going to give it off to him for something inside zone. It's going to be an east-west run or some little flip to him. We eliminate the idea that we have to play any sort of, your run fit. Maybe you're fitting the B gap from a linebacker perspective, or you're fitting C from a safety perspective. Like, I don't even have to worry about that. They're not going to run it in the tackle box. So now I just need to trigger and run downfield and get outside. Like you have to make defenses think. If you don't make defenses think, you're done because they're too fast. They can be too aggressive. And when you do that stuff with him, you eliminate things that defenses have to think about, and it makes football and life on them easier. And I think we've seen too many examples of that. So just play him a receiver. Like, it's very simple. Just play him a receiver.
Well, and the other thing is that when you put him in the backfield, he's got to deal with all 11 defenders. If he's playing wide receiver, he beats one guy. It's a 20, 30 yard maybe to the house. But the other thing is in the backfield, he's 170 pounds. If they get him, he's going down. He's late in the can. And look,
there's some guys you can go ahead.
No, you're good.
I'm saying there's some guys that have been generational that can do that. The Percys of the world. There's been guys that can do that.
And Percy receiver probably didn't have, and Percy Harvin didn't have the overall wide receiver skill that Elijah.
I would agree with that. I would agree with that from a nuance standpoint. I agree. Like, and Debo's a big, strong dude, so you can do some fun stuff with him. But this is not that, and you're trying to make it that, and it's so wild to watch. Like, if I'm watching what did this guy do well in New York, it's none of this stuff. Just put him at receiver, man, and let him go. Let him play outside corners where he has a real natural feel for how to break off routes or run double moves or just generally set up and attack blind spots. Like, he's good at that stuff, and they're sort of making him Kevin's always had this fascination with this stuff, right? Like, they drafted Anthony Schwartz and tried to use him that way. They used to do the JoJo Nats and stuff. I'm all about motion and movement. That's fine with me. But when you do that at the detriment of a player who can do things for you downfield that are effective, it's just hindering your overall offensive picture. And I think that that's so flawed. And it's a part of, again, why I don't like I just feel like, what are we spending time in the meeting rooms drawing up? Like, you really think this is going to work? Like, okay. I mean, sure. But it kind of reminds you, Jeff, that, you go Browns fans only watch the Browns. And I think you have to, the bye week's a good opportunity to look around the league, get yourself Sunday ticket and watch how other teams are operating and the ease at which they can create mismatches and different things, some motion that does exchanges and makes the route concepts tougher to cover because they create last second confusion on DBs, or their alignment, the way they align creates some inside outside rules confusion on guys. And the Browns just aren't doing enough of that. They're 22nd in the league in motion percentage. The teams that are the best, the Chiefs, the Dolphins, the 49ers, those teams, the Chargers, they're using motion all the time. They're doing things, little wrinkles that get their guys into open space, and the Browns are just sort of being very rudimentary with that stuff. Or, the teams that are at the bottom that are successful, Indy and Philly, they're creating a bunch of RPO opportunities and unique things for their quarterbacks who are athletic guys. Now, I think Anthony Richardson, Jalen Hurts are a little bit more athletic than Deshaun, but you can still do those things with Deshaun in a way that can create some advantage spaces to take easy money from defenses, right? So, the Steichen Sirianni tree has done a nice job with that stuff. And, you have the game film, you have it. Like it's what's frustrating is, and the same thing, Jeff, I was saying earlier, like, the play action gun percentage, not under center, but in the play action from the gun is unique because teams are trying to defend that at an interesting clip because it looks different than stuff does under center. And it's causing some confusion. Like Arizona's third, like Dolphins are first. There's some other teams at the top of that are really good offenses right now. And like I said, the Cardinals are third. So was Drew Petzing here and just sort of like muffled? He couldn't get any opinion out that mattered, and he was excited to go somewhere that actually would listen to him. I would challenge Kevin in a way, and listen, man, if your listeners don't listen to my show, or they don't know me, you would be like, he hates Kevin Stefanski. I've been defending Kevin for years, but I am at the point now where I'm in a tipping point of what they want to be, who they are, and an ability to get there. And I'm like, who have you brought in to challenge your status quo? Who have you brought in to make you better? Bill Musgrave? I don't see you running anything that Cal ran. Like, very few elements of that Cal offense, which was not good, but the skill of it wasn't good. That's a recruiting thing for Cal. But the elements of that offense, I'm not seeing those things, man. And you haven't brought in any voice that has been able to challenge you and update some of the things you're doing. And one of the voices that you let waltz out and go be an offensive coordinator somewhere seems to be a guy who has his head on right. Because if you look at the Cardinals, based on the talent they have, based on Josh Dobbs running the system, they are, explosive run rate is one of the best. The contact rate at which guys are being, in run game hit on the other side of the line. There's a lot of really positive statistics around Arizona's offense, and they played some good defenses. So, Jeff, I don't know, man. I'm just like, really confused, brother. I'm really confused about the thought process of the people leading the offense.
Well, also the thing is just the simplicity of what you think this is. I mean, like, you tell me you have a wide receiver room with Amari Cooper, Elijah Moore, Donovan Peoples-Jones. You have Deshaun Watson, David Njoku is your tight end. Let's go play ball. I think the problem is, I think they're just trying to do too much as opposed to just doing enough. And that is a big one here. But we're going to switch it up. One more commercial break in here. Jake Burns joining us here, Locked On Browns. Everybody stick around. Segment 3 coming up next. And we'll find the positive part to talk about Cleveland Browns defense. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. As you guys all know, I went through a big tough time in my life. Losing my older brother and my father within an 11 months period. You have to learn how to get through your daily life, because when stuff comes up personally, you still have to get through your daily life. You have to get through your job. You have to be a parent. You have to be a husband, all of these things. Have you ever felt like your brain is getting in the way? Well, what you can do is you can check out therapy. Therapy helps you figure out what's holding you back so you can work for yourself instead of against yourself. It's helpful for learning positive coping skills and how to set boundaries. It empowers you to be the best version of yourself. It isn't just for those who've experienced major trauma. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge if it's not working out. Make your brain your friend with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/locked-on. Not a ton of time left, but Jake, obviously the Cleveland Browns defense. I think the biggest surprise for me, Jake, to this point is the quickness of the success. Last week notwithstanding, but look, this is a Baltimore Ravens team. They just seem to find a niche when this team is at full strength. Obviously, Lamar and Mark Andrews, but it'll be a test this week. Obviously, I'm sorry, not this week, the week following against San Francisco 49ers. But overall, to where this defense is to this point, and to think there's still the potential to even get better.
Yeah, they've been good, Jeff. They've been really good. They've been very fast acting. They've been very communicative. They have done a nice job in those three offenses that they faced in the first 3 weeks. Now, Baltimore put a wrinkle in front of them with spacing jet motion that really messed with them in an actual tangible way, because Baltimore actually uses that jet motion in a way that many teams don't. So, the linebackers have been and the safeties too, have been a very attacking group in the run game. Well, the jet motion causes the Browns wanted to bump gaps and move players. And, if you have a motion going from right to left, you have to slide and exchange gaps. And what that does, Jeff, is it creates a moment or two of hesitation off the snap, which doesn't allow you to be downhill attacking linebackers that are fixing as your defensive line gets upfield. And that's why Baltimore was able to find some run lanes. So they have to fix that. And they didn't tackle well. It was the first game I thought they haven't tackled well. So that element is in place too. But again, if you're not playing in an attacking way and you're kind of sitting back and receiving things, it makes tackling a bit more difficult because you're not taking the tackle to somebody. You're trying to play a defensive nature of just get somebody on the ground. And that doesn't work out real well all the time. So, the run game is what I'm concerned about, because I know that the teams they have coming up on the schedule, Jeff, are going to put them in conflict all the time. The 49ers, Indy's RPO game, which is going to hold a player in a position because you have to honor a stick route, a flat route, a slant route behind you. So, like I said, 49ers, Rams, Seahawks are going to be motion teams. They're going to challenge you. So the guys up front are going to have to create more chaos than they did in this last one. Instead of like having the backers and Grant Delpit clean it up, they're going to have to be more disruptors in the front. So I thought the pass game was fine, relatively fine. It's funny, Jeff, the NFL, the best man coverage team in the NFL right now from an EPA per play basis is the Browns. They were the best man coverage team in the NFL in week 4. They did a great job in it, and they really only were beaten cover 3. So their cover 3 stuff was actually the yin and yang of this game. Was they had the best EPA defensively in man, then they had the worst EPA in cover 3 in week 4. So the Ravens did a good job of eating it up, and you'd be like, well, what does that look like? Well, it's actually Lamar just made some plays. Like the ball to Andrews in the corner of the end zone was just to flip it up, us or nobody ball that worked out great. He had that step up scramble right and throw way back across his body to Andrews. I thought like, hey, great play, risky, great play, worked out. And you're going to play Lamar Jackson, who's one of the special athletes in the NFL. You're going to get some games where he's a hero, and he was a hero in this one. The scramble drill where he got out from Alex Wright, pushed out right, and from the opposite side of the field, right, Jeff? Like I think Zay Flowers beat Martin Emerson from the opposite side of the field. So like, I'm not worried about that. Those were sort of fluky plays. There's only one pass play, in my opinion, Jeff, that caught them in a bad situation. They play what's called cover 3 Mabel, which is a man. It's a Meg check, which is a man everywhere he goes on the backside of a 3-by-1. The Ravens ran a mesh concept, which took the single receiver side with the number 3. The number 3 means the nearest inside guy, ran mesh. And then, the one-man side is chasing it. Denzel's chasing his man on the mesh. And then you have the running back that side, the Will linebacker pairs up with him. And so when this happens, the Mike linebacker has to take Mark Andrews coming on that other drag route. He has to step up and take him. Well, he didn't communicate it right or understand that it was the Meg check off Mabel, and that left Andrews wide open in space, because if you have a corner chasing guy from one side to the other, then they're vacating the zone coverage on that side. It's a good check against certain routes. You just have to be able to know when guys are vacating, and that's why Andrews has the only blown coverage. I thought that otherwise they were fine in coverage pretty much all day. Lamar only threw for 185. I thought they were fine. Just a couple hero ball plays that happened. And even the JOK ball on the rail route that they ran off a little pick play, JOK was inches away from knocking that away. So they just didn't make the plays. But the run game stuff does need to be fixed against those specific motion types. They have to get better at that. And I thought the defensive ends did not play well squeezing some of those counters, the Q counter bash stuff that the Baltimore likes to run. So trust me, the 49ers are going to run some unique gap down stuff. You got to be able to handle that. You got to squeeze it down. If you go upfield, brother, they're going to kick you out until you're in the first row of the bleachers. So you got to squeeze it, compress it, make the hole challenging. I have faith, Jeff, that they're good. Long story short, I can get deep into the stuff here, but I have faith that they're good. They're fine. They have to clean up how they're honoring some motion stuff. And I think we'll see less of some of the things, the bad habits that we saw last week. And I think they'll spend the bye week really hitting on that. And it's probably good. It's never good to give up points because you didn't do a good job against something, but it could expose a flaw that they had because since he doesn't use motion, Tennessee doesn't use motion. And then, Pittsburgh, it uses some motion, but that offense is just an absolute train wreck. So they needed to be, not that they needed to be humbled, but they can take some good from a bad game is my point. And I think they can apply it and get better and move forward. You should still have faith that this is a really good defense. I think they're shook. They got themselves punched in the mouth for the first time in a unique game plan, and hopefully they can respond to it, Jeff. And I think that there's a good chance that they will. But I firmly believe that the way the collective is playing on that side of the ball, that they're good enough to win a Super Bowl with the defense. Now the offense has to step up to the plate and carry their weight too.
And I'll be honest, I think having a bad day was a good thing because, again, I will continue. It shouldn't have been this easy out of the box. It shouldn't have been. And, adjustments have to be made. And, we heard from Jim Schwartz when he first got here, well, I'm going to play man. Why wouldn't I? Look at the guys I got. Eventually, he was going to have to go from chess to checkers. And, the Ravens obviously probably tipped that hand. And keep in mind, the 49ers are always going to come in here with, George Kittle. They're going to come in here with Christian McCaffrey. They're going to come in here with Ayuk. And all of those guys either measure up to what the Ravens had on Sunday or better than what the Ravens had this past Sunday. He's Jake Burns, part of the OBR. Obviously, OBR has been around forever. They just continue to get better and better. Love the crew over there. Great people, great work. If you guys aren't familiar with it yet, come on now, guys. Seriously, the OBR. Come on, y'all should be together with it right now. Make sure you follow it. Obviously, at Jake_Burns 18. The show itself, Locked On Browns. Appreciate you all for making it your first listen every single day. My 7th season now at Locked On Browns seems crazy. A lot of things have changed. Heck, when I first started this, Jake used to come on. Jake didn't even have kids back then, for God's sakes. Now Jake's got 2, for goodness sakes. So make sure, you have joined the everyday crowd by subscribing to the Locked On Browns YouTube channel. Appreciate you all who make Locked On Browns your first listen every single day. Show is always available, always free, wherever you get your podcasts. This has been your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound, LGB on the LOB. Let's go, Browns.